member of the Servite order, but he has a gift of healing. Will you welcome, please, Father Peter Rookey? Very welcome. Now, please make yourself comfortable. Father Peter, can I ask you, first of all, about this healing power? Is it your power, or what? What way does it work?
No, I just pray. The jackasses bray, and I pray, and the Lord does it all. I was reminded of that in a scene in Medjugorje several years ago when a deaf-mute lady, 40 years of age, brought there by her parents from Florida, after being blessed, went up the mountain and all of a sudden caught the attention of her parents, and she heard clearly the first time a donkey braying, and the donkey was nowhere in sight. She zeroed in on him in the bushes and gave him a big hug. That was the first thing she heard with great clarity.
Okay, why do you think this power is kind of manifest through you? I mean, people come to you and these cures happen when you are present.
Well, the Lord has to come to us, Pat, in a form that can be seen, heard, smelled, touched.
But why you, Father Peter? Why you? Why you?
Well,
were you particularly pious?
No. The Lord doesn't have much choice. Before Him we're all sinners. He chooses some of us sinners through whom to work, because, as I say, the scholastics used to say, and it's very true, St. Thomas Aquinas, there's nothing in our mind that doesn't first come through our senses. And so to make Himself present, God has to take some visible, audible, smellable form, touchable form to come to us. He comes to us first through our parents. He could create immediately, but He doesn't.
Yeah, but I mean, when this happened to you, the first healing experience, how many years ago? A long time ago now.
Yes, before you were born, I'm afraid, Pat. We came here to Ireland, to Benburb, County Tyrone, in 1948, and from the first days we were there, people came to be blessed, and some returned and reported they were cured, whatever it was. And the first thing you know, busloads of people were arriving. We had to have the services outdoors.
And was it specifically you, or was it your brethren in the order as well?
Well, actually, what I was doing, and I continue to do, is to bless the people with our saints. Now, there are relics of our Servite saints, St. Peregrine, the cancer saint, whose feast was just this week, by the way, and St. Philip Benizi, St. Juliana, the 7 founders of the Servites, and so on. St. Anthony Pucci, whose life I wrote.
Okay, and do people,
with their saint,
do people have to believe to be healed?
I would say they have to have some kind of belief.
I mean, Jesus said thy faith had made thee whole.
Yes, correct. But sometimes God even gives us faith through a miracle. That happens also. I believed it happened in the case of David Parks, who he told us had lost his faith and his health and
well,
and
David
his wealth.
David's in the audience, so I mean, David, there you are.
My goodness.
I mean, most people that I know who know David would know him as a singer.
That's right, Pat.
But before that, you were a footballer. Tell us the whole story, David.
Well, I was struck down with an illness, Pat, in 1977, just at the height of my soccer career. And
how high was that now? How good were you, David?
Well, played League of Ireland,
Yeah.
played against Pelé, won a cup medal with Bohemians, so
that's pretty good.
Reasonably high, Pat.
Okay.
Yeah. And struggled for 12 years with an illness, and finally had 2 operations on Christmas Eve 1988 and on the 7th of January 1989, and the prospects were bad. And I was given a week's holiday in Medjugorje, Anne and myself, by people who organised a travel agency, Heather Parsons. And I went out a non-believer, totally sceptic, Pat, didn't believe in these people who had healing powers, and was persuaded by Anne to stand in line at one of Father Peter's healing services. I was slain in the spirit and woke up with this intense heat passing through my body, and from that day to this, Pat, I haven't looked back. I am what you see.
Right, and perfect health.
Exactly.
And tell me this, you went to Medjugorje, but were you were sceptical going?
Oh yeah, well I'd left the church about 6 years prior to 88. I went on a holiday, Pat. The only reason I went was because Anne and I had spent a honeymoon in Yugoslavia. So it was a chance for a holiday, for nothing spiritual. I wasn't interested in religion at all.
Right. And now you are back in the fold, as it were.
Back in the fold, yeah. Changed my life totally, Pat, yeah.
Right, okay.
Totally.
Heather, you mentioned Heather Parsons. That's there, right. David. Heather actually has written a book called Man of Miracles. I believe you were swamped today when Heather, I think, was signing the books, but people came to see you in Veritas.
Well, I'm not much to look at. No, I tell people, the first miracle, I guess you could say I witnessed was in my own life when I was blinded and as a young lad, and my eyes were torn to, I won't say a worse word, but purgatory, I guess, if not worse. And they came back, my sight came back only by prayer. And now when I tell people I see okay, but I don't look too good. My brother reminds me of that. He says, you see all right, but you don't look too good.
All right. We have someone else in the audience, Patricia McGee and Patrick. Patrick, now Patricia, when this happened to Patricia, she was probably too small to know what was going on, so yes. You maybe start the story.
She was about 2.5 months when we discovered that there was something wrong with her sight, and we went to our own local doctor. Then we went to the Royal in Belfast. We got everything tested, and she was discharged from it and told she wouldn't see, that she was blind. And at that time I was heartbroken about it, and my father lived up in County Monaghan, and I went up and told him. He says, what are you talking about? There's a great man 3 miles down the road in Benburb. Get down and see him. I went home and told the wife, and we wrote that night. We put a self-addressed envelope into it. We wrote to Father Peter, and we got a reply in about 4 or 5 days, and we took hold to come on the Saturday week at 2 o'clock. We got a car and went to it at 2 o'clock. We couldn't get in a mile of it with people. They were everywhere. But we had this letter from Father Peter, and we got right through. And he came out on the lawn, and there was an experience I never saw, because he put his 2 hands on her head and he says, your child will see. And I could see through him at that time. He went transparent. It scared me. So we left and we went out, got into the car and started. We're about 3 miles down the road. In an old cars at that time, 41 years ago, there was a blind on the back window with a tassel. And the granny was in the car, and she had the child up, and she started on the tassel. And the cat says, oh my God, she can see. And that was it. There right. She is the day working a computer.
Patricia, yeah, your sight is okay. I mean, you're wearing spectacles, but it's pretty okay.
Short, but no.
I'm just short-sighted, but apart from that, there's nothing wrong with me.
On a computer.
What impact does this have when you hear this story told? Because you can't remember anything of this at all.
I've heard it told my lifetime, but it's hard to believe it, you know.
Yeah, but given that you are the subject of a miracle, you didn't think of joining the nuns or anything like that, no?
I don't think they'd have me.
All right. I want to go to the mother and son here. That's Geraldine McIlwain and Ryan. Now, Geraldine, tell me Ryan's story.
5 years ago, Ram was diagnosed as having a brain tumour, and we went to the Royal, and the doctor in the Royal told us that the type of tumour Ram had was very rare and very little known about it, in fact, in the great Western world. So he decided to take Ran in to perform some surgery and maybe some radiotherapy afterwards to see would it sort of remove the ugly cells that were left maybe after surgery. During Ran's radiotherapy, an Aunt of mine came round to the house that night, and just like David, I really was a disbelieving Thomas over these sort of healing things, and she suggested going down to Holy Cross Chapel to see Father Rookey. I couldn't even pronounce his name that night. I can remember sitting at the front going, Rookey, Rookey, trying to get it right. And that night, I had never been in the chapel before, and 5 priests come out onto the altar, and I can remember just looking up and just saying, that must be him, because there was just something so different about him. So he invited everyone up for the healing service, and me and Ran stood along just like everyone else. And Ran, it was very cold that night, and Ran had a hood up, and Father Rookey had been walking along and passed by us, and he stopped, and he looked at us and he said, and Reggie Donnelly at the time said to him, Father, no, this way, back to the start of the queue, and Father Rookey sort of pulled his arm away from him, and he said to me, who is sick? And I said, my son Ran. And he said, what's wrong? And I said, a brain tumour. And he began to pray, and I just can remember that night this tremendous feeling in my stomach, pit in my stomach, and I began to cry, and I couldn't stop the tears from coming out. I remember that night thinking, my God, if this man asked me anything, I'd just go to pieces here. I just couldn't speak. And he did. And he said to me, has he a shunt in? And I said, I just looked up and I said no. And the tears, my mother, I remember that night saying she'd never seen tears as big coming out of anyone's eyes. And he said, the beautiful tears of a mother. And at that stage, I just went to pieces. And after that, people had stopped us, and different churches around Belfast we went into, and said, you know, was that you that night, and your son, you know, through Father Rookey? And afterwards then, Ran had a scan afterwards, and the doctor that time said that the tumour had shrunk severely. And again, afterwards, they told us that Ran would be on special treatment till he was 14, and they performed another scan. I was up at the hospital 3 months ago, and said he didn't need any more treatment.
So he's completely cured?
Uh-huh.
All right. Peggy, what about your story?
Well, I had lost my voice for 2.5 years.
In what way? I mean, were you croaky, or could you just not speak?
A forced whisper.
A forced whisper?
And when I took a bad back, and friend Sissy asked me to go to see Father Rookey with a bad back in Swathra. And I said, all right, I was go, but I wasn't fussed about going. So when I went, I was in a wheelchair when I went. And Sissy happened to say to Father Rookey that I had no voice, and I hadn't it for 2.5 years. So he asked me to kiss the crucifix and to say Jesus. And I whispered it. And he did the same again. He says, now say Mary. And I whispered it. And the third time he says to me, now say Jesus. And I said it.
Perfectly?
Yes.
Were you a religious kind of person?
No, I didn't even want to go. Didn't even want to go that night. Because I had tried everything.
Okay, now we've heard some stories here of people who are testifying to the fact that healing works, and it works through Father Peter Rookey. He's not claiming that he does it, but he is the instrument, of, if you like, through which it happens. Does anyone here have any kind of skepticism about this kind of cure? Yes, sir. Way over there.
Good evening, Father Rookey. It's good to see you. No, what I was going to remind you of was in Medjugorje last year, you took a lady out of a wheelchair, which was in my section. I was helping out. And you told her to walk without the wheelchair, and she was scared. But you told her to walk without the wheelchair, and you took it away, and she walked half round the tent, which held about 400, and she didn't get back into it again until I left about an hour later.
Okay, now that's another story, though, similar to the ones we've heard.
She was 6 years in the wheelchair.
Okay,
and she
that's fair enough. I'm just wondering, does everyone here accept that these kind of cures do take place? I think there isn't a skeptic among us. That's very interesting. Because normally an audience there will be some Thomases in our audience. Answer me this one before we conclude, Father Rookey. Why does it work for some people? I mean, you will have hundreds of people queuing up to see you. Some will be healed, some will not. How does it happen that some have to go away disappointed?
Well, Paul, I believe it is, says the Spirit breathes where he wills. He gives his gifts, and how can we ask, why does he give you this gift of being on this program, Pat, having all this personality, and somebody else doesn't have much personality, let us say. Sometimes I can block, of course, my healing by, well, the biggest block is unforgiveness and hatred. There's a Dr. Bernie Siegel in Boston, for example.
We've had Bernie Siegel on this program.
Well, you did.
Yeah.
You know his line then, that hatred and unforgiveness can even cause serious illness.
He's a
like
wonderful
cancer.
man. He can he helps people live after cancer far longer than the doctors say that they should.
I quote him quite frequently in the healing ministry. I hope I'm not plagiarizing. I always give him credit, of course. But he has a story, which I'll tell very briefly, of the Nazi concentration camp where a certain Jewish man was caught going against the regulations and was sentenced to a flogging. Jack Schwartz was his name, which means black. He had a black mark against him in this concentration camp, which is Schwetzen. And he was taken his clothes were taken from him. He was attached to a post, and the flogging began. He fainted, and during that fainting spell, Jesus came to him and said, "You have to forgive your flogger." He came to, turned to this flogger, and said those healing words, "Ich liebe dich." I love you. Right before his eyes, that flogger saw those wounds he had inflicted on Jack Schwartz heal.
Father Rookey, it's been very interesting meeting with you, but a lot of people will want to meet you again when you come back to Ireland on your healing ministry. When is that?
Well, we're hoping to come back in October sometime. It will be advertised, I'm sure. And,
okay, around October.
Yes.
I'm going to have to leave it there, but Father Peter Rookey, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just stay put for the moment, okay? Now,